Hi, welcome back to All This Science. This is a science podcast that describes an interesting aspect of science for 5 minutes or less. We are students, Taylor and Kara. We are guest podcasters for this episode. Today, we will be discussing the topic of composting. Composting is the act of organic materials deteriorating, producing nutrient-rich soils. There are 3 different types of composting, which are good to use. Food and yard waste can be composted at home, and some cities send it to industrial composting facilities for processing. This is called home composting. Vermicomposting is where you use a worm composting bin to help break down your waste. Industrial compost is where facilities make waste from food, yards, and animal waste. The process of backyard composting requires bacteria and fungi breakdown of organic matter. The effectiveness depends on oxygen, temperature, moisture, and material disturbance, and organic material. Compost will then turn kitchen and yard waste into usable soil or resources. The industrial compost process at every facility is different, but one process is after being delivered to the facility, it is unloaded into a pile and sorted to remove all non-compostable items. Next, the mix is ground up to the proper size, between small and big, around the size of small rocks. Then the mix is put into long covered piles, with trenches underneath. The pile will sit for 3 to 4 weeks to heat up. Next, the covers are lifted and the mix is moved and recovered for 2 weeks. The material is then again moved and left without the cover off for 2 weeks. After the process, mixture should become compost, according to Toxopedia.org. A lot of people ask, what can you compost? You can compost grass, garden waste, fruit and vegetable scraps, tea and coffee grounds, and nuts and eggshells. What not to compost? Meat, fish bones, nuts, animal or human waste, deceased plants, dairy products, and oils and fats. Yes, you can compost those awful weeds in your yard. A weed is a plant that has mastered every survival skill except for learning how to grow in rows. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, there are 3 basic compost ingredients. You have the browns. Examples are dead leaves, branches, and twigs. Then the greens. Examples are grass, fruit scraps, vegetable waste, coffee, and tea grounds. Last but not least, you have water. Having the right amount of water is key to composting success. You don't want it too wet or too dry. The brown materials provide carbon for your compost. The greens provide nitrogen and water moisture to help break down the organic matter. Did you know that yard waste and food scraps make up 20 to 30% of what we throw out? Those should be composted. A lot of people ask, why compost? Well, there will be less pollution in the world, not as much waste in landfills, and less methane and greenhouse gases will be emitted because it won't be in landfills. Composting helps plants grow better due to nutritious soils, and it holds water better. The soil will also have more microbes, which makes healthier soil and protects plants from disease. My parents say compost is best aged like cheese. I mean, would you prefer to eat a nice aged one or something that was made last Thursday? The older the compost, the more nutritious the soil gets and helps the plants grow better. Thanks for listening to this episode of All This Science on composting. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact allthisscience@gmail.com. And always remember, science rules.